Very interesting and important topic, interfaces. Interfaces are very much similar to classes. You already know class is a combination of variables plus methods. Whereas interfaces is a combination of variables plus abstract methods. I repeat, abstract methods. Now you are going to learn the difference between a normal method and an abstract method. You are seeing a normal method here, which is routinely used inside the classes. Function name is demo. Function is open here and closed here, and some definition is written here. You already know this part is called as functions definition. These kind of methods are very commonly used inside the classes. It means that classes will have methods with definitions, whereas interfaces can have only abstract methods. Abstract methods cannot have definition. Abstract method is just simple function declaration only. There is no function definition. Now you would wonder, without having a function body or without having a function definition, what can we do with that particular function? In very short, I am going to tell you the importance of abstract methods that are used inside interfaces with proper examples. Before that, let's learn syntax. How to create interface. Creating interface is dead easy. Look at here. I'm going to create an interface called as vehicle. The keyword interface is used. Access modifier followed by the keyword interface and name of the interface. The name of the interface is vehicle. You already know the interface is a combination of variables plus abstract methods. For simplicity, I did not take any variable here, but I have taken one abstract method. This is called as an abstract method. It's very easy to identify an abstract method because there won't be any function body. Function definition is not allowed inside the interface. This is an interface. Now, any class which wants to implement this interface can do that like this. Here there is a class called as car, implements vehicle. I'll tell you now what this line means. Car is telling to vehicle like this. My dear vehicle, I know you are an interface, and it's a promise, it's a commitment that whatever the abstract methods that are defined inside you, I am going to implement. You don't worry. This is a promise that is made by the class car. And if you look at the syntax is much more similar to the syntax that we have used for inheritance. In case of inheritance, there is a keyword extends, but in case of interfaces, we have a keyword implements. But the main difference is that whenever we say implements, it's a commitment. Car has committed with vehicle. It means that vehicle had whatever the abstract methods that are there inside the vehicle, those methods have to be defined inside this car. Whatever the abstract methods that are there inside the interface, those abstract methods have to be implemented by the classes which implements that particular interface. Right now, every student who learns this concept by the very first time, they will not understand one point. The same class without implementing vehicle can also execute this method display. When you execute this method display, it will definitely print, hi, I am a car. Without implementing vehicle also you can do it. Now the question is that if you have understood whatever I said so far, you should definitely get a doubt. Why should I implement this vehicle? Why should I make a promise with the vehicle? Why we need to have a commitment with the vehicle? To address this point, I am going to tell you two examples in very short. You yourself will be able to understand the importance of interface. Let's imagine a car manufacturing company. Before a car is manufactured, there is a phase called as designing. During designing, an architect who belongs to mechanical engineering, they'll decide the dimensions of the car. What is the width? What is the height? How it has to look on the road? What is the front view? What is the back view? What is the top view? What is the side view? What is the size of the wheel? What are the sizes of the lamps? All these are called as prototypes. Prototypes are developed during designing phase. Once the prototype is designed, based on these prototypes, developers will manufacture a car by following whatever the rules and regulations that are proposed by the designers. Developers in the development phase is committed with the designing protocols. They cannot violate, and finally the car comes to the road. It is based on the rules and regulations, that means the protocol that is specified during the designing phase. One more example, if you are building a house, before the construction starts, designing should happen. Architects will design will propose the dimensions of the hall, bedrooms, kitchen room, etc. things. These things are done on paper, also called as blueprints. Once these blueprints are given to the development team, they will understand what kind of house that they are going to build. Basically, designing tells what has to be developed. During development, developers has to think how it has to be developed. So that's all guys. You should have understood the interfaces now. Interfaces are defined during designing phase. Like any other product, software is also a product, right? In order to develop a software, a proper designing has to undergo. During designing, software architects will define interfaces. Interfaces are part of protocols. They define the interfaces. So once the interfaces are given to the developers, they'll understand what has to be developed. But how it has to be developed is the responsibility of developers. But designers will tell what has to be developed by giving a blueprints, and interfaces are part of blueprints. Interfaces are defined during designing phase and they are implemented during development of software. This interface vehicle is defined during designing phase and it is implemented during development phase. This is development phase and this is designing phase. I hope you got the point. Let's look at one simple example here. Let's look at an interface, stack. Stack is a very popular data structure which has the following functions: push operation, pop operation, top operation. During designing phase, architects cannot implement these functions because these functions have to be implemented by the classes during development phase. It's a commitment of a class. Once the class is committed, that means if once the class has started implementing this stack, then that particular class has to implement all the abstract methods. Push is an abstract method which is related to stack interface. This push has to be implemented by the class. What are the classes? Starting from C1 to C8, or what are the classes in reality? What are the class that implements this particular stack interface has to implement all the abstract methods. There are 3 abstract methods. All the 3 abstract methods have to be implemented by the classes. One important point with respect to interface that you are going to learn: multiple inheritance. We have already studied inheritance. The types of inheritances that we have already done are single, multi-level, hierarchical. Now you are going to know about one more inheritance technique called as multiple inheritance. In multiple inheritance, there are multiple parent classes. That means base class 1, base class 2. These base 1 and base 2 are classes. If a derived class or a child class, if it is acquiring properties from more than one parent class, then this kind of inheritance technique is called as multiple inheritance technique. But guys, there is one serious problem with multiple inheritance. Look at this serious problem. Imagine that there is a method called as display inside base class 1. The display method displays I am from India. Imagine that in base 2 there is a method whose name is display. Of course, you can have its own functions, and unfortunately the function name is display, which was already there in base 1. It doesn't matter. These two are independent base classes. They can have the methods with same name. And here let us imagine there is a function called as display, and this function has a function body which says I am from United States of America. So the display in base 1 says I am from India, and base 2 says I am from United States of America. Now if you create an object for the derived class which is acquiring properties from both base 1 and base 2, if you create an object for this one and if you execute the method display, now my question is, what is the answer? Do you think the answer should be I am from India, or else do you think the answer should be I am from United States of America? No, it's an ambiguity. It's one of the serious problems that cannot be eliminated. It is one of the biggest problems that are related to multiple inheritance. Other programming languages like C++, which allows multiple inheritance, but whenever you get this kind of thing, there will be an exception. But in case of Java, multiple inheritance is not allowed. Not allowed. No means no. There is no multiple inheritance in Java in case if you are implementing using classes. Using classes, no way. But there are some advantages with the multiple inheritance. As long as base class 1 and base class 2 cannot have the property with same name, you can acquire the advantages of multiple inheritance. You can allow it. You can implement multiple inheritance in Java using interfaces. Using interfaces, it is allowed. Yes, it is possible. Multiple inheritance is possible in Java using interfaces, but it cannot be possible using classes. Now let us imagine base 1 and base 2 are interfaces. They are not classes, interfaces. Here you have an abstract method called as display. Here also you can have an abstract method called as display. Notice that display cannot have the function body. They cannot say that I am from India or I am from USA. They cannot say, as in the way they said before. They cannot say now because they are abstract methods. They cannot have body. So a derived class which implements both base 1 and base 2 interfaces, if you create an instance for derived class, then it is the responsibility of derived class to implement the display method. So if derived class wants to print I am from United States of America, it can print. And at the same time, if it wants to print I am from India, it can print, because it is responsibility of derived class to define the function. I already told you that interface is a combination of variables plus abstract methods. So far we have seen everything that is related to abstract methods. Nowhere I have included a variable. You can have variables like this. Let us imagine that there is an interface called as movable and there is a variable called as average speed. And if you wanted to assign a value, you need to assign directly inside the interface like this. Because you cannot have constructor methods or you cannot create an object for an interface, because there is nothing inside the interface. Okay, it is meaningless to create an object or an instance for an interface. So there is a provision to have a variable. You can create a variable and you can assign some value. So any class which implements this particular interface can access this value through the name interface. Interface name is movable. So movable.avg-speed, you can access the value 40. By saying movable.average speed, you can access the value 40. Notice that since it is an interface with abstract methods, you cannot create an object. As there is no object, notice that all these variables by default they are static. You are going to access static variables just by the name of interface. If you can also have static variables inside classes. So just recall that how do you access a static variable's content? Using class name. In case if you have a variable inside interface, you will be using an interface name, because these are by default static variables. And notice that you need not to use any static keyword here. By default they are static and they are final. The meaning of final, it means that you cannot change this value. Once if you give any value, that more or less it works like a constant. The value is constant. It means that any class which implements this particular movable interface, they cannot change the value of average speed variable that belongs to the interface movable, because the 40 or whatever the value that is assigned is final. These are the few important points that you need to remember. In case of classes, yes, you can create object. But in case of interfaces, no, you cannot create objects. Classes can have functions and those functions should have definitions. But in case of interfaces, yes, you can have functions, but those functions or methods should be an abstract methods. That means they cannot have any function body or definitions. Yes, you can have variables inside interfaces. Remember this point. The variables inside the interfaces are static and final by default. That's all guys. We are done.